Welcome. This is a spoken commentary on Genesis chapter 36. We will walk through the text section by section, keeping our eyes on the single, organically unfolding promise plan of God that runs through the entire canon. Genesis 36 marks a critical structural transition. It brings the lengthy Jacob narratives to a formal close and prepares the reader for the Joseph sequence. This chapter is the 9th Toledoth, family records section in Genesis. As the primary narrative line narrows to safeguard the historical path of the messianic seed, the text pauses to show that divine oracles and secondary patriarchal blessings receive concrete historical fulfillment even outside the direct covenant line. God grants land, protection, and rapid political development to Esau's descendants, the Edomites. The catalog serves as a historical foil to Israel, proving that the Creator remains faithful to His spoken word across generations. We begin with verses 1 through 8, the Toledoth of Esau and his separation from Jacob. The chapter opens with a distinctive double formula. This is the line of Esau. These are the names of, found nowhere else in Genesis. It functions as deliberate connective tissue linking narrative series across generational lines. Verses 1 through 5 catalog Esau's marriages to Canaanite and Ishmaelite women, Adah, Oholibamah, and Basemath. These unions recall the strategic and spiritual fractures of Esau's youth that brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Verses 6 through 8 record the physical separation of the twin brothers. Because of the vast wealth and livestock both had accumulated, the land of Canaan could no longer support them together. Esau relocates his entire household to the hill country of Mount Seir. This spatial departure mirrors the earlier split between Abraham and Lot. Jacob remains to inherit the promised land. Esau is prospered with his own geographic dominion. Verses 9 through 19 shift the focus to the generations of Esau in Mount Seir. The text moves from immediate family units to the multi-generational expansion into the distinct tribes that form the nation of Edom. The sons of Adah and Basemath are carefully distinguished from those of Oholibamah, highlighting the cultural weight given to the first two wives. Adah's son Eliphaz produces 6 sons. Basemath's son Reuel produces 4. These names demonstrate the rapid fulfillment of the divine word that Esau would become the progenitor of a vast people. A crucial detail appears in verse 12. Timnah, a daughter of Seir the Horite, becomes a concubine to Eliphaz and bears Amalek. Amalek thus links the incoming Edomites with the indigenous Horite population. The notation that Amalek descends from a secondary wife implies that the Amalekites were viewed as partially illegitimate from the start. Unlike the broader Edomite branches, the Amalekites later launch unprovoked warfare against Israel and remain a uniquely hostile adversary throughout the Old Testament. Verses 20 through 30 preserve the independent lineage of Seir the Horite, the indigenous inhabitants of the region before the Edomites arrived. The text records that the Horites were driven out, slaughtered, or subjugated by Esau's expanding line, though elements of their identity were never fully assimilated. This regional conquest establishes a typological pattern. Esau's displacement of the Horites prefigures the later crossing of the Jordan by Jacob's descendants, who would drive out the corrupt nations of Canaan to claim their divine allotment. At the same time, the careful preservation of these Horite and Edomite records inside Israel's sacred archive underscores that fraternal kinship continued to matter. Israel retained a deep historical interest in Edom precisely because of the blood bond between Jacob and Esau. Verses 31 through 39 describe the kings of Edom. The text outlines a major societal transformation from nomadic tribal family units into a centralized monarchy. 8 successive Edomite kings ruled the territory centuries before any king sat on the throne of Israel. The throne did not follow a hereditary line. Successive rulers came from different families and frequently shifted the royal capital. This points to an early volatile system of city-state alliances or military selection rather than a stable dynasty. The explicit note, before any king ruled in Israel, anchors the list in a post-monarchic compositional setting, no earlier than the days of David or Solomon. The chapter closes in verses 40 through 43 with the catalog of the Alephim, the chieftains of Esau. These regional leaders are listed by family, title, and place of residence. Personal names gradually crystallize into enduring place names across the Transjordanian frontier. This final catalog seals the truth of Isaac's patriarchal oracle. Esau would eventually break Jacob's yoke, live by his own sword, and carve out a prosperous dominion away from the fertile fields of Canaan. That word is fully realized in history. We can summarize the sociological progression recorded in the chapter. First, patriarchal family centered on Esau and his immediate sons. Second, tribal chieftainship under the Alephim. Third, centralized monarchy under 8 successive kings with shifting capitals. God's providential care shapes the structural timelines of neighboring societies, just as it shapes Israel's. New Testament writers return to these historical and genealogical frameworks. In Romans chapter 9, verses 10 through 13, Paul draws directly on the twins Jacob and Esau to defend sovereign divine election. Before the children were born or had done anything good or bad, God declared that the older would serve the younger. Covenant status depends on the purpose of him who calls, not on human lineage or works. In Hebrews chapter 12, verses 16 and 17, Esau stands as the primary warning against sexual immorality and godless behavior. He traded his permanent inheritance for a single meal. Believers are urged never to forfeit their eschatological destiny for temporary earthly comfort. Finally, Romans chapter 11 and Ephesians chapter 3 place the multi-ethnic expansion of Abraham's lineage, including the non-covenant nations of Ishmael and Esau, within the larger Abrahamic promise. Genesis 36 chronicles Edom's independent growth. The New Testament reveals that the ultimate scope of that promise is fulfilled when Gentiles are grafted by faith into the single nourishing root of Israel through Jesus the Messiah. When read through the text-immanent framework of the promised plan of God, Genesis 36 serves as an essential link tracking the faithfulness of the Creator. God's word remains active even outside the immediate messianic lineage. Secondary blessings accompany Esau's line simply because he remains a son of Abraham's broader household. The corporate people of God do not develop in a historical vacuum. While humanity's rebellions fractured sacred space, Yahweh's redemptive campaign works through concrete history to restore order. The overarching promise plan moves toward an eschatological climax in which national enmity is broken down, hostile spiritual principalities are disarmed, and a unified multi-ethnic family is gathered from every tribe, language, and people to dwell forever in the restored cosmic temple of the New Jerusalem.